for the first time ever, the government has admitted to having differences with the RBI. Speaking at the Times Network, India's Economic Conclave, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley confirmed that the differences between the two was over credit flow and liquidity support. The FM questions how a mere discussion on the RBI functioning could be considered a destruction of an institution. He also asserts the central bank's policies must be in tandem with those of an elected government. Let's listen in.
The RBI is a very important institution in the life of this country. The RBI is an institution of great credibility. The RBI's independence and autonomy does exist within the framework of law, and it's an institution whose autonomy and independence has to be respected because it has benefited the country. Now, having an opinion different is not confrontation. I think Indian media, in its hyper-journalism, converts every discussion and two conflicting opinions as an area of confrontation. For example, if you look at the history of the RBI, you've had several incidents in the past where governments have had a different view from what the RBI has had. And then those differences either get settled or the governors have made way. Now, we had a particular opinion on 2 or 3 major issues. And I think the immediate issues were relating to credit as far as the credit in the market is concerned, and issues relating to liquidity in the market. Now, every person involved in some kind of a business activity, whether it's the financial sector or the manufacturing sector or services or in the MSME sectors or even in agriculture, will tell you that they were facing difficulties as far as credit and liquidity is concerned. We are the sovereign government. We are the most important stakeholder as far as the management of the economy is concerned. And therefore, a discussion with an important institution which is independent and autonomous, to tell it that it's a part of your functions, and therefore this is one area of the economy which you must seriously look at. How is it destruction of the institution? After all, the RBI has the responsibility as far as credit and liquidity is concerned. We are not addressing a third institution. We are not taking over that function. Therefore, at all levels, meetings and discussions with me, between the bureaucracy, at the level of the Prime Minister and in the board, and using all instruments of discussions available with us to force this issue for a discussion as a sovereign accountable government, that we find this problem is real as far as the Indian economy is concerned, and therefore in order to maintain our place as a high growth economy, this is a problem which the RBI must address. How is it an issue of confrontation? And therefore I think if the government of the day is not able to convey the difficulties that are felt in the system, it would certainly be failing in its responsibility as far as the government is concerned. Don't forget what our first Prime Minister Pandit Nehru had written to the then RBI governor, when he said, the economic policy of the country is determined by the elected government. The RBI's monetary policy functions are autonomous and independent. But other policies of the RBI certainly must be in tandem with the economic policy of the country which has developed. Now, supposing there is an economic policy of all successive governments that the MSME sector has to be encouraged, can a credit policy of India be, no, we will not give credit to the MSMEs? And therefore, in such situations, the autonomous institutions also have to be informed that there is some difficulty which is arising in the system and that requires to be corrected. Therefore, please don't give the kind of hype to it and say it's a confrontation, it's a destruction of institution. Well, if you call it a destruction of institution, then as one of the famous authors on the RBI put the title of his book, it will be a dialogue of the deaf, because you won't be then giving the concerns to each other and not listening to each other. But in live democracies, concerns of the market and the economy have to be addressed and have to be communicated. Now, as far as the present governor is concerned, let me tell you, if you look at the history of Indian governors in the RBI, Dr. C.D. Deshmukh was an officer of the Indian Civil Service. Mr. B. Bengaru Ramarao was an officer of the Indian Civil Service. Thereafter, you had several officers who have been, Mr. R.N. Malhotra was an Indian Civil Services officer. before that, Mr. Y.V. Reddy was an Indian Administrative Service officer. Mr. Subbarao was an IAS officer. And therefore, if we start denigrating every institution for an officer who has had 35 years of experience or more, as far as the economic management of the country is concerned, so we start calling them rubber stamps, then I think Indian media is probably doing more damage to the institution than anybody else in the system.
Mr. Jaitley, I hope you heard the round of applause you got for that answer that you gave. But Mr. Jaitley, may I just put on record that that was the line used by the Congress party. It is Mr. Rahul Gandhi who tweeted and said in his press conference. So instead of shooting the messenger, Mr. Jaitley, may I ask you, what would be your response to Rahul Gandhi?
Well, can I stop you at that? Navika, can I stop you at that for a moment?
I've stopped.
Prime Minister Nehru asked Governor Ramarao to resign. Then you came, Mrs. Indira Gandhi asked Governor Jagannathan to resign. Thereafter, you had Mr. Yashwant Sinha who asked Governor R.N. Malhotra to resign. Then you had during Mr. Chidambaram's tenure, 2 governors with whom he was not even at speaking terms. But we've had, otherwise, I've worked with 2 governors and I've had the best of relationship with both of them, even though I may not have agreed with them on many issues.
And that was candid Finance Minister at the India Economic Conclave speaking about the RBI government relations and how defending the government on that. Moving on to the contentious, the RBI board RBI board is going to meet today and is likely to focus on key issues like the liquidity that was part of the last board meeting's unfinished agenda. Neha Bothra joins us with more details on this. Neha, will the equation between the RBI and the board ease to some extent with Shaktikanta Das taking over as the RBI governor now?
The RBI board is meeting today, the first one to be attended by new RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das. While the spat between the central bank and the government had reached a point of no return in the recent past, last board meeting signalled an uneasy truce. Shaktikanta Das earlier indicated that the agenda for board meeting today will be a carry forward of the unfinished agenda of last meeting. This, of course, will focus on liquidity issues. The government in the past has nudged the Reserve Bank of India to provide more support to NBFCs by way of easing liquidity so as to boost lending in the economy. However, the Reserve Bank of India has resisted this move, saying that any sort of special dispensation for NBFCs would not be required, even though the RBI would be the lender of last resort if at all required. As far as other issues are concerned, remember governance issues, governance reforms, governance structural reforms. This is something that the board will talk about as far as equations between the board members and RBI is concerned. This, of course, has come to a point where we are seeing relations ease to some extent between not just RBI and government, but even the board members, because we had one of the board members, S. Gurumurthy, tweet that it's RBI and government, not RBI versus government, and he appreciated the stance taken by new RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das, where he had said that the government is not just a stakeholder, but a participant as far as policy making is concerned, an equal partner, so to say. Other issues that will be taken up, of course, also involve the transfer of surplus funds from RBI's balance sheet to the government. This has been a very thorny issue, while the government has been